Hello, this is Crystal Racing here with the 2020 Sahkir Grand Prix race report, and that is right. You do not need to adjust your screen monitor sets or whatever you're looking at this from. Sergio Perez, after 190 Grand Prix starts, has finally taken his maiden victory in Formula One. What a mental 8 days of Formula One we have just had. From Grosjean's monster fireball smash, from George Russell moving into Lewis Hamilton's seat due to, of course, Hamilton contracting the virus, which I can't name, and of course Jack Aiken and Pietro Fittipaldi making their Grand Prix debuts. I'm trying to catch my breath right now, but what we have witnessed is just been absolutely beyond extraordinary. But enough waffling from me. Let's go through the result. Sergio Perez, race winner, got to be 10 out of 10 from me. Okay, his start to the race was okay. Well, I mean, he got involved in a bit of wheel-to-wheel action. You could say he made a good start, but he did get involved in a collision and dropped behind sides. Of course, I think he was pincered somewhere between the collision that took out Leclerc and Verstappen, but of course, he was spun around by Leclerc, of course, how can I forget, and went to the back. So at a restart, he had to go through all the cars, and let's be honest, for the majority of the race, I mean, I wasn't even sure he even looked like a potential podium finisher. And frankly, I mean, but at the second restart, after the second safety car, of course, he then leapfrogged, I think, side Stroll and Ocon to take what was then a net P3, but of course with Mercedes then screwing up their pit. No, it wasn't the safety car, it was the second virtual safety car, beg your pardon. But after that, with both Mercedes then making an absolute cock-up of their pit stops, Perez was in a net lead and ended up winning the race. 10 seconds ahead of Ocon. My voice is almost gone. I'm so out of words. 10 out of 10 for Perez. Just a truly unbelievable comeback drive. Literally right up there with the likes of Kimi Raikkonen's 2005 Japanese Grand Prix win and Jenson Button's 2011 Canadian Grand Prix win. And it's well overdue. I mean, arguably, he could have taken his maiden Grand Prix win all the way back in the 2012 Malaysian Grand Prix, where he kept mysteriously looking up at turn 13, which allowed Fernando Alonso to win the race that day. And of course, some people do speculate that Sauber were telling Perez to let Alonso win because, of course, Ferrari being their engine suppliers at the time. But I'm so made up, and the craziest thing is that this could well be his penultimate Grand Prix appearance in Formula One, which is just mental because, of course, he still does not have a seat for next season. And of course, I have seen quite a few photos of him bumping fists and knuckles with what's his name, Herbert Marco and Max Verstappen and Christian Horner. Second place, taking his maiden podium, is Esteban Ocon, 9 out of 10. I'm kind of almost forgot how the hell he got into second place. How did he get there? I mean, he once again got out qualified by Ricciardo. He did jump ahead of Ricciardo, but I think all the safety car and virtual safety car pit sequences kind of helped him out. And allowed him to jump into second place when the two Mercedes messed up. And for that, I'll give him 9 out of 10. Well done, because, he's shown flashes of pace, but he's not strung a race together so far at all this season. But today he did exactly that, so well done, Esteban. Third place, taking his second podium of the season and his third career podium, it's Lance Stroll, 8 out of 10. Got out qualified by Perez by 0.4 of a second. Did look like he was going to be fighting for a podium place against Sainz, which, I mean, yes, he did go and beat Sainz, but when you consider how far back his teammate came from and the fact he got leapfrogged by Esteban Ocon, I've got to give Lance Stroll an 8 out of 10 because, he doesn't really seem to press home any of these sort of advantages he ever gets on his opponents. And once again, just like a Monza earlier on this season, he once again bottled it. So, yeah, sorry, Lance, but gotta do better next time. Fourth place, Carlos Sainz, qualified 8th. It's very hard to rate Carlos Sainz because, to be honest, you would think that in these sort of races he would take advantage of, all the straps and all the problems other people have. But today he finished 4th, and I think, considering, I know McLaren do not have the fastest car in the midfield, if we're going to be frankly honest, because if we're going to be truthfully honest, Racing Point, for me, have had the fastest car in the midfield all season long, but have not actually taken advantage of it very often, unlike today. So I've got to give Carlos, but because, Carlos Sainz is usually good in these type of races, I'm a little bit disappointed, so I'm going to give him 8.5 out of 10. I think he'll be also very annoyed at the fact he got beat by Stroll, because Stroll is a beatable driver. 5th place, Daniel Ricciardo. I'll give him 8.5 out of 10. Looked like he was going to be Ocon again, but because of what happened, he fell down. He dropped down the order a bit, got past Bottas, but then quite a few cars got past Bottas. I'll get on to him much later. And Ricciardo got 5th. 6th place is, of course, Alex Albon at 7 out of 10. Qualified all the way down in 12th place. Now, how do I honestly give him a real score? I'm going to have to give Alex Albon a 6.5 out of 10 because, to be about over half a second slower than your teammate in Q2 and to get knocked out in Q2 is very poor, especially when you consider the fact he's, put in much improved performances over the past 2 races, and yet he's kind of come back down to earth again. It's not a horrible performance, but when you consider 2 Mercedes ran into trouble, we probably would have finished 8th if it wasn't for those 2 cars issues. So, I have to say this, as much as Albon has improved, I still think Sergio Perez definitely deserves that seat at Red Bull far more than Alex Albon does, because, it's kind of obvious, really. I don't need to explain any further. 7th place, Danny Kvyat, a superb weekend all round, 9 out of 10. Qualified a fantastic 6th place, but on race day he got caught out by, cars overtaking him, some of the pit strategies where his team got outsmarted. Very unfortunate, but I have to say this, with Yuki Tsunoda having finished 3rd in the Formula 2 Championship, I think it's a too little too late for Danny Kvyat, in spite of what has been a weekend of when he has actually completely beaten Gasly all round this weekend. And, very, very surprisingly lacklustre from Pierre, I have to say. 8th place and a reject of the day. It is Valtteri Bottas. It is a 1 out of 10 from me. Yes, I know you will look at the statistics and say he outqualified George Russell. He beat George Russell in a race. But let's be real here, folks. Today was an absolute disaster for Bottas. Even with the pit stop kerfuffle, he still was in 4th place ahead of Russell at the end of the last safety car. And the way he got overtaken around the outside by George Russell, and then of course later on to have Carlos Sainz screaming down his radio for Carlos Sainz to tell his team, wondering why is the Mercedes in front of him is so slow, it is just simply abysmal. It is simply a disaster, and not only that, you've got to realise, of course, George Russell got a left rear puncture. Of course, George Russell was running up in 2nd place, but I'll get on to him next because I need to carry on talking about a certain Finnish driver, Valtteri Bottas. made a terrible start, got beat by George Russell at the first start. Then, George Russell kept acing his restarts on over Bottas, and you know what? I don't really want to talk about Valtteri Bottas anymore, because if it wasn't for the fact he signed a contract for next year, he'd be well gone. But if I'm going to be honest, if George Russell gets a second chance next weekend and beats Bottas again, I think Toto Wolff will be very tempted to pay Valtteri Bottas to either take a year out or take George Russell's seat at Williams, because I've got to say, those two options sound very tempting. Ninth place, although it is a provisional ninth place due to the pit stop kerfuffle where, of course, he still could get disqualified for taking on his teammate tyres by accident. It is the driver of the day, George Russell, 10 out of 10. To jump into an unfamiliar car and to be within only 200 of tenths of your far more experienced teammate in your first qualifying outing is very impressive. Yes, I know it's Bottas, not Lewis Hamilton, but the fact of the matter is, George Russell showed a lot of flair and aggression on display, and he even imitated a few of Lewis Hamilton's favourite catchphrases, saying, "Oh, I've got no power," and then he goes and sets the fastest lap. George, mate, you are learning fast. But I've got to say, that overtake on Bottas around the outside in Sector 2, after the second safety car restart, fantastic. Wow, what a big ballsy move that was. And I have to say, when you did that move, I was praying that you would go and chase Perez and overtake him to win the race. But as we all know, the left rear tyre punctured. And I have got to also bring back an old award that I've completely forgot about. Of course, it's called the Circus of the Day Award. And that award goes to Mercedes for the whole pit stop kerfuffle where apparently they muddled up Russell and Bottas' tyres, meaning that they were circulating by the safety car, the wrong tyres, meaning both had to re-pit again. And of course, Mercedes did give Bottas a botched pit stop. Although, of course, you've got to realise, though, that's really on the team, really, not on Bottas. But having said that, Bottas still completely screwed his race up by getting overtaken by 4 cars. Wow. This race is going to have some huge ramifications for the future of this sport. I don't think there has ever been one race that I've seen that could, have such huge consequences for the future of this sport. This one race alone. Because, I'm sure that someone is going to snap Perez up. If it's not going to be Red Bull, I am quite scared it could well be Alfa Romeo deciding to give Kimi Raikkonen the boot and pay him off if they can if of course Perez's sponsors are willing to pay Kimi off, that is. But I'll get on to Kimi later. 10th place, Lando Norris, 7 out of 10. Unlucky with the problems he had in Q2, qualified 50th, don't know what happened. But in the race, he drove a standard race, got a point. He just wasn't on it, but, at least he didn't do as badly as some others did. 11th place, Pierre Gasly, 7 out of 10. Well below par for Pierre's average performance for this season. Got destroyed by Kvyat, qualifying 9th, finished 11th. Oh, man, what on earth happened? I'm completely lost for words, really. Very lackluster. 12th place, Sebastian Vettel, 6 out of 10. Struggled with the car all weekend. It's the same story. Sebastian Vettel just wants to leave Ferrari now. 13th place, Antonio Giovinazzi, 8.5 out of 10. Very, very quick in qualifying. Qualified 14th. And of course, once again, showed more impressive pace in the race. And, if that Alfa Romeo had more horsepower from its Ferrari engine, he probably would have got a point. But of course, Ferrari have lost all that horsepower thanks to that FIA directive that Matteo Binotto did with them over the winter, which was pretty stupid. But 14th place, Kimi Raikkonen. I've got to give it 6 out of 10 because You know, we qualified 19th, got beat by Jack Aiken. Made a good start, but then he spun on the curb on the exit of turn 2. A really, 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 really poor weekend from Kimi all round, if we're going to be honest. I mean, after he went to have his pit stop, he never really caught up on Aiken until, of course, Aiken went and spun and lost his front wing. But he did overtake Kevin Magnussen. But I'm going to say this, though. If I was Frederic Vasseur and Sergio Perez cannot get that driver at Red Bull, I would probably be tempted to get Sergio Perez in to replace Kimi Raikkonen. Now, I know a lot of you are well aware of the fact that Kimi Raikkonen is my favourite driver, but, you know, Kimi Raikkonen is 41 years old, and I have to say, some of his weak performances this season when he's been struggling on his off days have been very worrying, to say the least. Now, I know the car is very slow, but you've got to realise, though, Antonio Giovinazzi has really heavily outpaced Kimi at some races this season, especially today. And I have to say, you know, that $20 to $30 million would come in very handy at Alfa Romeo. And I have to say, if they replace Kimi Raikkonen at the end of this season and decide to pay off whatever, you know, the $5 million that he's supposed to be getting paid for next season, I can see it happening quite easily because Sergio Perez deserves a seat in Formula 1. There's no question about it. And if it means getting Kimi Raikkonen out, I couldn't not even argue with it anymore. 15th place, Kevin Magnussen, 7 out of 10. Yeah, Haas had the same weekend as always. I'm not even interested in them because, of course, next season with Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher finishing 10th in the Constructors' Championship looks like a very realistic possibility because today they had absolutely no pace. I mean, Magnussen tried all he could, but you know, when your car is that slow, I mean, it was always inevitable he was going to get beat by the Alfa Romeos. He should have been beaten by at least one of them. Well, really, both Williamses, but of course, both of their drivers had problems today. So it's 7 out of 10 for me for Kevin Magnussen. Jack Aiken, Grand Prix debut, replacing George Russell today. 7 out of 10. Well, I suppose, you know, he did very well in qualifying to be just less than a tenth off behind Latifi, but in the race he was running ahead of Kimi Raikkonen, and then he went wide at the final corner. Hit the barrier, spun around. Thankfully, the pit lane was just right in front of him, so he didn't lose that much time from his accident. But he ended up finishing 16th. So it's going to be 7 out of 10. And then, of course, 17th and in last place is another new boy, Pedro Fittipaldi. Not raced for an entire year, but of course, you know, all he did today was run a nice, steady, solid race. No flashy speed, you know, dropped behind Kimi very early on and just stay there, really. Just to gain experience. 7 out of 10. Solid performances. No, you know, kept it smart, kept it clean, kept conservative. You know, and I suppose, you know, that's a few miles under the kid's belt. And, of course, looking at the retirees, Nicholas Latifi was having a fabulous race today. Running ahead right in on top of the battle in the fight for the cars in the bottom three in the Constructors' Championship. Running ahead of Giovinazzi. A truly brilliant performance today. 9 out of 10. And unfortunately, he broke down with some mechanical problem on what has to be by far the best performance I've seen from him this season. I've got to say it, but Nicholas Latifi is finally really beginning to kick on. Of course, yes, I know obviously, you know, naturally out-qualified a teammate for the first time since, of course, with George Russell out at Mercedes, and of course Aiken in as his new teammate. It was always going to be inevitable that he would find the out-qualified teammate, but, you know, I'm sure, you know, Latifi can feel very good about himself despite not being able to finish the race today. And of course, the two drivers who got taken out on the first lap, Max Verstappen, 6 out of 10, took it very conservatively on the first lap. I'm not sure what Max was trying to do, but, you know, despite the fact that he kept it very clean, for some reason he then sort of went wide at what was it, turn 4, but then of course, Leclerc tagged Perez, meaning that he had nowhere to go and then suddenly slid into the barriers. A very, very strange accident which ended his race. Well, I mean, I suppose we'll say Max Verstappen was too busy watching other cars and actually watching where the hell his own car was. But, of course, in regards to his qualifying performance yesterday, yeah, only about a tenth of the Mercedes. Very impressive once again from Max, but the race start was a total mess, so I've got to give Max 6 out of 10. And of course, Charles Leclerc, 5 out of 10. Another driver who had a brilliant performance in qualifying, only 2 tenths off the two Mercedes boys, but of course he was the one who caused the whole incident in the first place. Tagging Perez, showing absolutely no racecraft once again at the start of a race. I mean, what the hell is it with, with Charles Leclerc going gung-ho at the start of the race? I have to say, while Charles Leclerc for me has driven better this season than compared to last season, he has been making some very, very, very questionable errors under pressure, and I have to give it 5 out of 10. I have to say, both him and Kimi Raikkonen are very lucky not to be given reject today because, a certain Mercedes driver really embarrassed themselves today. And, of course, as for the ramifications for the future of the sport, I could be going on about how, this could well be the race that saves Perez's career. It could get him a drive at Red Bull. It could also, of course, possibly lead to Valtteri Bottas getting kicked out a year early and have Kimi Raikkonen take his place. Not Kimi Raikkonen. Oh, man, what the hell is going on with me? George Russell take Valtteri Bottas' place at Mercedes next year if they decide Bottas is a waste of a seat. Because, let's be honest, he kind of is. So, this has been Crystal Racing. If you enjoyed this video, please do all the usual stuff, and I will see you again next time.